Welcome to Party Girl Interrupted. Today I'm sitting here with my friend Ben. I'm excited about this conversation
I've
because,
been looking forward to doing this all week.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
exciting because you're building Kapala,
Yep.
which is based around a lot of like culture and masculinity. And I'm really excited to get kind of that emotionally mature male perspective on what it means to be a man.
Yeah. So, right now, the brand's Coppola by Ben Rose. Ben Rose is this idea of the masculine, conscious
Hmm.
man, right? The one that, we try to aspire to be, which is
Yeah.
so difficult. It's a life's journey.
Yeah.
And the brand came from my childhood, where I always I wanted to be like the next Tom Ford.
Okay.
And I envied him, and I loved his creativity, and I loved his ability to run and step into a role in for all these different companies that he ran, but yet he wasn't like an artist. He has a visionary. And that was very inspirational for me as a young adult and
Mm-hmm.
teenager. And so, if you look at my life, and I'm in my 40s, and I went on my own soul quest, right, to figure out kind of who I am,
Hmm.
because in the early stages of my life in the 20s, I didn't know quite who I was. We're
Yeah.
just kind of like winging it,
Yeah.
right? We're winging life and
Yeah.
figuring out what works and what doesn't. And then I had a quarter life crisis.
A quarter life crisis in your
Yeah.
20s.
Yeah, I had a very successful business in my 20s, and it was one of those businesses where I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but somehow I
You're
figured,
winging it.
yeah, so somehow winging it was figuring it out, but it wasn't really gratifying, and it
Mm-hmm.
was kind of almost like soul sucking, and I loved it, and I was really good at it. And when you think you're good at something, or when you feel almost like that's what you should be doing, but just because you're good at something doesn't mean that's what your purpose is.
Yeah.
And I realized that people around me and who I was as a person, I wasn't achieving the things that I wanted to in my life, even though financially I was very sound. And the financial enabling made me think, oh, well, this is what I should be doing.
This is what success looks like in your 20s.
And I think that's what men feel. Men
Yeah.
associate this idea of financial success with masculinity.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that's not always the case. It
Yeah.
can be, of course. People can be on their purpose and mission and find a job or find a
Yeah.
career out of it. But I would say most people don't. And men in their relationship with money is a very interesting journey that takes time and maturity to finally get a connection to, hey, what are priorities
Right.
and what are my priorities? And how does that relate to the people around me and the people the partners in which I choose to be with? And because as we age and as we mature, how we choose a significant other changes. The flower doesn't call to the bee, the flower blooms and the bee comes,
I
right?
love
You
that.
finally are ready for
Yeah.
that partner or that person to come into your life. And so Coppola in general is the amalgamation of my life's journey into becoming a man. And the clothing symbolizes what I feel is what brings a man to his highest possible,
Purpose.
yeah,
Really.
purpose,
Yeah.
mission. What can we amount to be? How can I step into my best self? And Coppola is built upon ethics and
Right.
integrity and sustainability, which are very important to me. The brand is kind of a mirror of my lifestyle and my own purpose and mission. And so the brand kind of takes masculinity and allows other men and anyone who wants to wear the clothes to feel more confident because of all of the energetics that come into making the clothes and growing the cotton, and all are done in a very ethical and sustainable way. So the clothes is a symbol of what I feel is what a strong masculine man should be.
Yes. And it's very bespoke. Everything that you're making is very intentional. It's very specific. All the pieces are really beautiful. And you're really building, like you said, Kabbalah around men, like rebuilding, reinvention. So what problem are you kind of obsessed with solving right now?
What problem am I obsessed with
Mm-hmm.
solving? I can tell you that
Oh,
because it's really hard. So the business of sustainability in general doesn't pencil out.
ooh, okay.
Okay. It doesn't. And the reason why is when I look at who my suppliers are and who's growing the product, like
Mm-hmm.
growing the seeds, or if I look at the factories and I'm asking questions like, are you paying your workers
Uh,
living wages plus living wages? And then
right.
these are skilled workers, you get really, really different answers. And if I were to truly focus on how to make my dollar the most efficient, the cheapest sources to get the fabric and the cheapest or the less cost factories aren't necessarily the sustainable options. They're not
Yeah.
committed to
Yeah.
being better. They're just trying to figure out how to exist as a business, or they're trying to be as profit centric as humanly possible. And sustainability has a longer time horizon. And the challenge is to make enough community to get enough awareness without kind of breaking the bank, because all of that extra cost that went into finding the sustainable option or finding the ethical factory, there's additional cost that's built in it, which builds
Yeah.
up my costs.
Yeah.
And the business of clothing and the business of fashion, it's not as big margins as you think. And so, that takes away the ability to generate more revenue. And if I don't have enough income to come in to pay for the sustainability side of the mission, how do I continue to have a healthy business?
Right.
And so the challenge that I'm facing right now is, how do I have both a very
Mm.
profitable, healthy business, but also maintain my ethics and mission on this
Right.
purpose of creating this lifestyle brand that's committed to these bigger ideas?
Mhm. And it just reminds me because I just spoke with a coach a couple days ago who said, she said, you can build a business and not build yourself. One is always going to ask more from the other. And that's really true, right?
Well, a lot of, especially in the early days in almost all businesses, whether you're Steve Jobs and Apple, right, or Bezos with Amazon, the business is them. You
Right.
are the business.
Right.
And then over time, you try to generate enough interest
Mhm.
and you inspire the right people to come with you. And then the business starts running itself. And so how do we then start to take ourselves outside of the day to
Mhm.
day of the business and just start to delegate or manage the business? So it's not so much a symbol of who we are,
Right.
who I am, but it becomes its own life force that lives and breathes and gives other people
Yeah.
life and responsibility, and it gives other people meaning.
Right.
And that's a business that I would love to be. Copala is very much living within my,
Right.
my brain, and it's coming, unfolding every day as we speak.
Yeah, it's so much fun to be a creator, whether it's fashion, whether it's content creation, writing. I really enjoy this. So let's come back to building and the male identity because you mentioned like so much of male identity is derived from success and achievement, right? How have you been able to kind of mitigate the masculine side? Have you been able to refrain from what we call and we hear so much about, which is toxic masculinity?
So, well, I could honestly say that I was a toxic boy with inappropriate priorities.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's like how I evaluated and judged what was good in my late teens and early
Right.
to mid 20s isn't the way that I continue to evaluate life now. It kind of evolved into what's
Yeah.
important. And this idea of toxic masculinity, where vulnerability is looked at as a weakness. And as you do more inner work, you learn that actually vulnerability is your greatest strength.
It's vulnerability, it's courage. That's Brene Brown.
But to your friends, like, you can't just be vulnerable, because that sometimes can be appear as weak
Weak.
or as not good as, or something which you could be looked at in some
Yeah.
lesser light, which is just frankly not true. And so then we identify toxic masculinity again with maybe the idea of financial success,
Mhm.
with physical strength, but it's really emotional intelligence
Right.
that is what converts toxic masculinity to positive masculinity. Even the term masculinity has some negative connotations, and that's, a lot of it comes from social media and who's projecting leadership, like our
Mhm.
leadership. Who are our leaders right
Mhm.
now? Yeah, it's not necessarily the symbol of healthy. It's very polarizing,
Mhm.
right? And so we associate this idea of power with masculinity as
Right.
well. Like, the people who are usually touting or trying or giving advice online are probably
The mouths.
the mouths that shouldn't be. It's all a front.
Yeah.
And it's a projection of who they think
Yeah.
they want you to see of them, when it's
Exactly.
really not who they are
Yeah.
as a person inside, right?
Yeah.
Healthy masculinity is to understand oneself, is to look at one's shadow, right?
Mhm.
To look at yourself and figure out, how am I responsible for the choices that I
Mhm.
make? And how are these choices like my doing?
Mhm.
I'm not a victim. My choices put me into the seat
Mhm.
right here today. It was my choice that
Right.
brought me here today. And to do self work is to reflect on how am I in that energy? How am I in that room talking? You run into people that, you hear them talk about, oh, I'm with this partner and she's this and she's
Mhm.
that, and they treat me so mean. And the truth is, when I give advice to other men, you have to reflect on where were you to allow that energy to come into your world,
Right,
right? Because you invited it.
right.
Okay, now that it's in, and now we have some awareness. Well, we don't like it. I don't love the experience of
Mhm.
dealing with this person. The way to walk through it is through communication. You have to be honest with yourself, and you got to be honest with that person that you're having either this conflict with. So what is healthy masculinity? It's the ability to manage conflict and allow yourself to listen to the other person's
Right.
side without interrupting,
Yeah.
without having to get your point across, without having to win. It's very much in our ego. Ego doesn't always have to be a bad thing, though.
Mhm.
Like having an ego, it protects us, right? It's a protector. It's also ambition. It wants us to achieve, wants us to be better.
Mhm.
It also, this idea of ego or even judgment protects us.
Mhm.
Like we don't want to be overly judgmental without
Yeah.
the information, but like to be judgmental
To have knowledge.
is to have knowledge of an understanding. Obviously, you could be overly judgmental and you
Yep.
can overly egoic. And as we kind of mature and as we grow to try to become a better person, we start to grow out of other old relationships. They don't just connect anymore. The conversations
Yeah.
become maybe
Your body feels it, your nervous system feels it.
right. The whole system feels it.
Mhm.
And that's a graduation to maybe the next stage of your development is,
Yeah.
the people that I have been connected with, that was a phase or that was a period of time and I got what I needed. And now I'm feeling like there's some new energy or
Mhm.
new people that might help me grow in new ways. And that's a totally normal and acceptable thing. And I think that's a sign of a very strong masculine identity is to be in a constant growth mindset. Like
Right.
I always want to be better. I always want to learn. I'm curious, but I also understand that things change and to allow that to happen and to navigate with that.
That's a fantastic answer. I was just so excited to just
Yeah.
learn more from you. Something that you said, talking about vulnerability and kind of how that ties into emotional maturity. Do you feel that there are places that men can go to feel safe to be honest with their emotions? I feel like that's something very much lacking in our culture. They talk about the loneliness epidemic. Isn't it a male loneliness epidemic we keep hearing about? Where are spaces, in your opinion, that are safe for men to go to be honest?
I think that for men, it's difficult, honestly.
Yeah.
And there are men's group, but like just the number of men that are in men's group is
Mhm.
kind of statistically low, right?
Yeah.
I've kind of led men in general in terms of group settings, but never in kind of a formal
Yeah.
group. The answer is you find them in community settings. Like we belong to a community called Summit.
Yes.
Okay, where that's very communal, where you can
Mhm.
meet other men on their mission, right? It's a great place to actually find support from other men that are going through the same things. Like the
100%.
entrepreneurial
Yep.
challenges we share kind of are very connected. And then as our relationships develop, I think it's very important for men to have a coach or a therapist. And I think that's, in my opinion, probably the first step to being and feeling vulnerable is to
Mhm.
have someone that you can bounce ideas off
Right.
of or to actually share without feeling judged
Mhm.
or feeling like you have to hide parts of you because they're going to judge you.
Right.
Like to have someone like a therapist or a coach. I find that there are plenty of relationship coaches that have studied a particular methodology
Mhm.
like internal family systems,
Okay.
IFS, and
Yeah.
doing parts work to help me communicate the things that I'm feeling. And it's kind of brought out and allowed me to intellectualize and understand that I'm not one thing, I'm parts of a lot of different things. And some of those different parts of me drive and they get triggered and they react, and to control that reaction
Mhm.
in those different moments. Because the way to really identify if the work that we're doing is actually working, like we read all the books and we go all the
Mhm.
therapy and we see all the coaches and we ask all our friends, right?
Mhm.
But the true way to show if the work that you're putting into is working is in the pause between the trigger and the reaction. And I think the best coaches teach that. We only know that it's working when we are triggered,
Right.
right? When can you make peace? Well, only during war, right? That's when you make peace. So understanding that we are going to be triggered, to be triggered is human,
Mhm.
right? But we can control that pause if we don't react right away and we train ourselves
Mhm.
to sit with that trigger for however long before we actually process or create action, that actually is literally the difference between, the road rage driver and the monk that sits at the top of the mountaintop.
Yeah,
Like the monk, you can tell him he's ugly, you can tell him his mom's terrible, right? He doesn't care, right? Because he's a monk, because he's done all of this
right.
work where or no matter what, you can't touch him, right? So that, not that we're all going to sit on the top of the mountains for 40 years and be monks. There are ways to get better at
Right.
at controlling our reaction and at pause.
And then circling back to the relationship, I think trigger can equal a conflict generally within a relationship, right? With two people, someone gets triggered and then it's a conflict. So, one of the most important things that you can learn from a coach, less a therapist, because the therapist is just listening as you talk, not to demean clinical psychology,
Yeah.
but with the relationship coach, you can actually learn conflict management skills. I have so many conflict resolution skills. I studied the Gottman method, if you're
Okay.
familiar. Those guys are like the OG relationship, but it is exactly what you said. Like, it's in the moment. I can say, okay, yeah, I know how to turn towards and I know how to do all the things, but it is going to be in the moment of like, can I take this pause? That's where the growth is.
Totally. There's a point where I was doing all this reading on all like relationship dynamics
Hmm.
and consciousness work, and how it was really interesting. I was trying to call in this partner that
Hmm.
was doing the work too. And then I ended up meeting somebody. And what was really fascinating about that relationship, which failed miserably, was that we were so by the book of conscious communication. How do we give each other the correct space to allow to process? How do we communicate in such a healthy, are you not speaking in a
Yeah.
healthy way? And it became what's called tone policing.
Yeah.
And the tone policing is like overusing all of this like
That's like therapy speak, I
therapy
think.
in the relationship. And then we started to like gaslight each other unintentionally, because I was being more conscious and you were being more conscious. So it was hilarious. It was like beyond,
Like,
right?
look.
Looking back on it, it was ridiculous. The point being is that, you'll start meeting people when you do the work that allow you to see the signs, see all the flags, right? The red flags, the yellow flags, and the green flags, right?
Hmm.
And then we start to evaluate. And when we realize that certain old flags that we thought were green aren't really green, they might be a different color. And then when we're able to reflect before we engage, well, maybe this person isn't necessarily the right fit,
Hmm.
even though my body, my coding tells me, oh, I'm so attracted to this
Hmm.
person. But they're not necessarily as compatible as somebody else, right? Because the thing that makes relationships the strongest, compatibility, number one, and two is values. Like,
Yeah,
are you
shared
value
values.
aligned,
Yep.
and are you compatible? Like, do you want to have children, not have children?
Right.
All
Are
right.
you in the same direction? I feel like that's what it is. Our paths working together to move in the right direction. People will change and grow. And like, do you choose? Can you still continue to choose this person? Which I think love is a choice. To
I
love
think it
somebody.
can be. Yeah, I think love can be a choice, and love can be, and it evolves. It could be evolved with the same person.
Hmm.
You can be head over heels for something, you meet them. It could kind of fall out of love, and then years later, you stay with them out of trust and loyalty and commitment and friendship. And then all of a sudden, you can fall back into like a deeper sense of
Yeah.
love. Like love isn't one thing. We feel it in emotion, and you can't argue with our emotions. Like we can discuss whether we should be having them or not, but the truth is we're having them, and that's what we're trying to experience. When we put another person into that
Hmm.
space, of course, there's going to be conflict and triggers and disagreements.
Hmm.
And in partnership is really when we can grow the most,
Right.
because they're a mirror
Hmm.
to our behavior
Yep.
that we don't see when we're single.
Yep.
So when we're single and everything's great, and we don't have drama because it's always our choices. We don't really get the reflection
Mhm.
of our behavior, or we don't really know
Yep.
because people won't necessarily tell us.
Yep.
But in a relationship, that bubbles to the surface. And so how two people manage conflict is a huge green flag of resolution and longevity in that relationship. And we don't typically get to the first couple of fights till we start to get to know people. And so this idea of like allowing things to flow and get to know each other, like conflict is not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's because it brings up ways that we can reflect on ourselves to be better in the dynamic. Because I think we choose to be in a relationship because we both want to be in a relationship. The question is, are we though compatible to make this a long-term commitment?
Right. So this actually takes me I wanna talk about dating with you.
Yeah, of
You have
course.
an absolutely lovely partner, honestly,
Thank
one
you.
of the sweetest girls, super supportive, like, the first time we met, and she was like, "I can't wait to see you on billboards." Like,
Yeah,
she's
of
just so
course.
sweet. But outside of your relationship, in terms of dating as a whole, what are you seeing in dating right now?
Well, really interestingly enough, I had it's really funny and very cliche actually that
Mhm.
I gave up on the idea of being in a long-term committed relationship.
Okay.
Because I thought I wasn't ever going to find it. I thought I was just kind of warped and
Mhm.
like I was
Yeah.
too quirky and I came
Yeah.
from a family that like my mother was married probably like 7 times. My dad was married like 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah, and so marriage to me was never really the final answer. It never amounted to happiness. And, put that on top of, I have so many friends that were in loveless relationships or had already been divorced. Is marriage really what I see in a future partnership? And I was really conflicted. However, I love being in partnership. I love being in relationship. I feel my best in partnership. But I would say for the course of my 30s and into my 40s, like, though these partners were great, they're great human beings, I don't think that I was in a healthy relationship throughout that entire period of time
Wow.
until I met my current partner.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I really didn't know myself and I felt like I was in this transitionary period
Mhm.
of my life. But in that moment, it doesn't feel transitionary. It feels very much what's happening now,
Mhm.
right? And what I'm feeling now is like what it is. But if you kind of look at the time horizon throughout my 30s, how do you create a committed relationship with someone that still hasn't quite landed themselves and who they are?
Mhm.
And I really landed in who I was when I finally surrendered to the idea that maybe this idea of what a partner is, or maybe in a relationship is, like, it might not be for me. And then if it's not for me, I'm okay. I'll be
Yeah.
okay. And the moment, and it's so cliche, it's like I want to like laugh because the moment I said I'm surrendered, like I'll be okay if I don't end up in a partnership in a relationship. A couple months later, that's when I met this person, and I met this person in the last place I'd ever thought I would meet.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting journey, but I sure practiced a lot, and I felt like I was getting better and better. But truly, I think that dating, especially dating in LA, people say, "Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard dating in LA,"
Mm.
right? Well, I would think that's true pretty much anywhere. Just because we're in LA now, or we're in New York, or we're in
Mhm.
Miami, or we're
Those are,
in
by the way,
Chicago,
the top 3 cities, the worst to date. I literally saw a poll.
I'm sure. But let's go back to that poll. Like, why is it bad to date? It's because we're choosing to allow people into our
Yeah.
lives that necessarily shouldn't have that ability.
Mhm.
'Cause, and to say, does that mean that people that I'm dating, the priorities aren't our prayers? Well, this is the reflection of our choice of who we're choosing. If we prioritized who we brought into our world
Mhm.
in these places, you can pick and choose and allow people to unfold
Mhm.
without going too deep into an emotional experience,
Right.
because you're now looking for compatibility,
Right.
values, truth, authenticity, honesty.
Yeah.
You're looking for these values versus someone just hot and steamy,
Mhm.
right? Which, again, it's hard not to be attracted to
Right.
that, right? But the truth is that doesn't necessarily drive the long-term
Yeah.
relationship that we want to have. The
Yeah.
big love
Yeah.
is, how do we achieve the big love? And that's through prioritizing what is important to us. And whereas I used to have a checklist. Okay, it had to be this, this, this.
Yeah.
The truth is that checklist is also a prison. Oh, it has to be this. It's rigidness. And to allow to flow into somebody, to like let that stuff go, let the rigidness go, we might let in somebody that we would have never thought
Yeah.
that ultimately might be the best friend in the world, and that best friend that can turn into a lover, that can turn into the long-term relationship that we ultimately always want, right? And then with that said, not everybody wants to be in a long-term
No,
relationship.
there's
As long as you communicate your needs and your
yeah.
wants
Gotta
when you meet them like to go on a date, like
Mhm.
you meet them on Raya or you meet on Hinge or wherever you meet people in the wild, and you sit down and you listen to them and you hear them and you believe them. You trust what they tell you, I'm not ready to be in a long-term
Mhm.
relationship. That's not an invitation to try
to
to
change.
change them or change what it is that you want.
Here's where I have a question because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, agree with me or not, a lot of people are saying one thing and then doing or choosing another. I find that a lot of the horror stories I kind of hear are men and women who are saying, "Yeah, I do want the long-term thing," and then spending time together and all of a sudden it's like it's either a ghosting situation or it's a, "Yeah, I don't want to, you're a great person. I don't want to waste your time." I hear these consistently. I sit with girlfriends that are
Yeah.
coming to me with the same story. This started off great, and then whether it's like we had sex or whether that like I let him in emotionally, all of a sudden the person is gone, women and men. So
How do you navigate the person that says one thing and does something else?
yes.
Right. So we, the way that we evaluate people isn't necessarily with their words. Words are one aspect,
Yeah.
but actions tell a bigger story.
Of
Right.
course.
And I can almost guarantee you that these people that make these assertions or
Mhm.
promises, there's other parts of their actions that don't align with their words. Are their words congruent
Right.
with their actions? And usually they're not.
Or those early actions, like when they're kind of love bombing or doing any of that stuff.
Well, if someone is love bombing you, if someone is taking, like, let's say we really want to be in, we like this person, and they drop the L bomb a little too early,
Okay.
having a response like, "Hey, do you do this normally? Do you fall in love really quickly? Because right now I don't feel the same way."
Right.
Like communicating, "Hey, you're love bombing. Like I'm just not there right now,"
Mhm.
and not like taking it as like, "Oh my God, this person really is falling for me,"
Mhm.
but really taking like a step back. If you're not there, or let's say you're unsure, let's say I'm unsure, oh, I could like him or I could love him. I don't know. Well, that means if you don't know
Yeah.
yet, you're not. So it feels good for people to have desire upon you.
Mhm.
That's your ego. So the
Mhm.
love bombing is an ego feeder. Right? This person loves me so much. This person desires me. Okay, that's a reflection on oneself to do work. If someone's love bombing me, there's a desirous part that likes it. That's my ego. I have to do self work and think about, like, well, do I really like this person, or do I just like this person's affection they're throwing at me? And how do I step into my higher power
Mhm.
and not allow that to make decisions? Because that shouldn't be what makes me choose to go out with this
Right.
person. It should be, I like this person because they're genuine. When I talk to friends, both female and male, about their relationships, I also recommend a book. There's one
Oh,
book that I recommend.
curious.
I tell almost both men and women. It's called Way of the
Oh
Superior
my god,
Man.
of course it is. Oh my god,
Do
I
you
love
like?
it. We could talk about this for hours,
Yeah,
literally. David Detta,
yeah,
one of my favorite thought leaders of all time. And a lot of what yours how you are speaking, especially something you said at the beginning when you were talking about purpose, is what he's always said and what you are doing is the greatest purpose of a man is to be of service to the world. And
yes.
that's exactly what you're doing. And it's what every emotionally intelligent man does. I can talk about that book forever. You have no idea.
And for women, it's a good book to read because you
Yeah.
can see signs of what, in my opinion, a healthy masculine is, right? Well, the book is oriented for a man to.
I've gifted that.
It's the book I give out the most. And for women, when I recommend it, it's because here are the traits that you want to identify as healthy.
Right.
Because sometimes we're, because of how our parents, usually our father, treated us, we code love in a certain way,
Mhm.
and that coding might not mean healthy, right? Some games like push pull, the narcissism,
Yeah.
we code it as like
Mhm.
maybe we are not good enough. And the truth is that's back to reflection and inner
Mhm.
work. And this is why we need therapy and coaches and people we can talk to
Yeah.
that are unbiased, that can allow us to see above all of that
Right.
so that we can reflect and change.
I literally I swear to God, when you were about to say the book, I knew it. Because sitting across from you, I can feel the energy, I can hear, experience the emotional intelligence and the emotion and maturity you have that I don't feel with most men.
And I appreciate it, but do you understand how much work
Yeah, no, you have.
and pain and suffering that I had to go through to
Yeah.
actually get there? Was
Mhm.
my entirety of my 30s, when I thought I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
30s was the whole journey of how do I change the energy inside me to match the energy I want to have.
Yeah.
Like I had my father's energy, and my father's energy was fire. He was built on fire, which was anger. He's angry. He's hyper intelligent,
Wow.
Mensa, and it was instilled into me.
Mm.
And my father, sadly enough, passed away a few years ago,
Okay.
and it was because of that anger. It was because of the internal burning and that fire burning. And I saw in my late 20s, early 30s, that if I don't change the energy which powers me,
Mhm.
I'm going to end up like him. And I love him.
Yeah.
I love my father, right? But I'm still made from these parts. I'm made from his parts. And is it still in me? Of course it's still in me.
Yeah.
Do I have more discipline and control
Yeah.
now? Yeah. And discipline is also what makes a man. It's
Yeah.
discipline, right? It's being able to follow and guide yourself and have boundaries.
Mhm.
And that's the making of a man. And the Way of the Superior Man does a great job did a great job guiding me of like,
Mhm.
hey, I had a lot of these ideas, but I didn't quite know if I was doing it right.
Mm.
And David DeidaKathy writes so beautifully
Yeah.
that I had validation in some aspects in the book, and also I learned tools in understanding women better
Yes, that's a
and
big one.
what kind of women I want. So,
Right.
one of the major teachings of the book is in order for me to get to my highest power, I actually have to surrender to the divine feminine. So I have to meet a woman who is in her process
Mhm.
of raising herself
Mhm.
up for me to get to my
Mhm.
highest state.
Finding out that, like, we have the same favorite book, I
Yeah.
have notes from 2020. I wrote when I posted this years ago, I went, "The Way of the Superior Man. If you've read this book, can we date?"
Yeah. Good.
All right, some good tidbits. Live with an open heart, even if it hurts. That's
Hmm.
really good. Live as though your father were dead, yet be free of his expectations and criticisms. Your purpose must come before your relationship. You
Yes.
will often want more than one woman. Integrity and discipline does not mean suppression. Choose male friends who challenge your mediocrity and
Yep.
enjoy the criticisms. Stop waiting for the completion of something to start living your life in the present. And I
Beautiful.
think I could read that to so many men and they would go, or women as well, it would go over their heads. So to have done the work, to be sitting in your highest self, is able to understand that and then teach that to others.
Well, I mean, isn't that a great clarifying question when you're meeting someone for the first time?
Hmm.
When you ask them these questions, if
Hmm.
their eyes glaze over, if they
Yeah.
don't take it seriously, I
Yeah.
don't care how hot you are,
Yeah.
right? There's nothing wrong with having a steamy night with somebody, but allowing yourself not to get attached to
Mhm.
someone who isn't worthy of
Right.
your affection
Right.
and that emotional weight is on you,
Yeah.
right? Like until we find somebody
Mhm.
that meets these parameters,
Right.
right? As you're saying, like can respond to and they can pay attention and they're in their work and they're doing the things that you identify as healthy. Like that's when we give them parts of our heart
Mm-hmm.
and the emotional weight that comes with the potential of being triggered, that comes the potential of being vulnerable. Like just because we're having sex with somebody doesn't mean that we love them. It doesn't mean we hate them either. It just means that it's an experience that we can share together and connect. It's a way to connect with somebody, but it doesn't mean that they should own or have any possession of your heart and your emotional state until you give it to them, until they
Yeah.
allow it, until they earn it. They really need to earn it
Yeah.
because that's when they show you who they are. And so this idea of like they said one thing and then they act another way, that is a reflection on us not allowing them to earn that
Mm.
place. And we might have given parts of us a little too early, and that's okay. We can reflect. We can take a pause. We can take a pause. Let's say something's going great, and to tell the other person, hey, I just need a second to process this. Please give me a couple days. If they start insecurely calling you and texting you and messaging you, what's wrong, not giving you space, that's a sign
Mhm.
that they might not be secure enough for you to be in a relationship. That could be a sign. You could have needed this time for yourself to process how you're feeling because a strong partner will give you that time,
Mhm.
will process with you
Yeah.
and will allow you and be secure in themselves enough to be able to give you that time to do what you need to do.
That's a lesson that I actually took from somebody that I was seeing,
Yeah.
but was that there were so many times in either conflict or when communication needed to be had around something that partners, ex-partners would demand the answer. And
Yeah.
I recognize now that what that comes from, but demanding the answer, I am such an external processor. If you demand an answer, like,
Yeah.
why did you do this? What were you thinking? I would try to like solve it in the moment because I could see that that was their expectation of me. And I would just be word vomiting. And sometimes it would add to the conflict because I'm not really saying what I mean or I haven't had the time to process it.
Right.
The gift that this person gave me was, asking me a question. And then when I started to kind of do my wordy word vomit, it was like, hey, you don't need to answer right now. Like, take a day, write it out. I know you write out the answer if you want. Like, you don't need to answer this right now. And honestly, it's almost silly, but what a gift
I mean, it's
it
beautiful.
is.
Now, here's the question. In those experience,
Mhm,
when you're word vomiting, what's actually happening is you're kind of in this overwhelmed state.
mm,
And the way that you deal when you're overwhelmed with feeling and
mhm,
thought is that you
yeah,
keep, verbalizing
mhm,
every internal thought. But that reflection, the discipline or the
mhm,
ability to reflect on that, just that skill,
mhm,
right, is to stop, not have to have that someone to tell you,
yeah,
hey, you should slow down, or it's not up to that person to tell you
mhm,
to relax, which
mhm,
nobody ever relaxes after being told to
mhm,
relax. But like it's not them that should tell you take a break. We have to
right,
recognize that in us,
yeah,
that it is up to us to take the break. So if it is an unhealthy thing to do, you're going in this overwhelmed state, which is an unthinking
right,
state,
yeah,
to recognize that when you're doing it, to stop yourself. But over time, you'll start to stop yourself sooner.
mhm,
What I love about this relationship you had with this person, they were able to communicate with you that they saw this and they were able to help you recognize what that was, and they gave you the space
mhm,
to do it without feeling pressured or without
yeah,
having an answer. Now, the next step to that
mhm.
experience is, how do I do that without someone telling me to do it?
I've gotten so much better at it now
It's
because
amazing.
it's literally ask a question, and instead of trying to find the answer, it's, "Hey, I need a moment to process this," or "I don't know the answer. Like, maybe
Yeah,
we can talk it out together." And I have seen that's a massive change for me in the last year. I wanna talk about my experience and kinda get your take on it because I kinda brought it up to you one of the times that I saw you, I think a summit.
yeah.
But I had just had this experience where I guess I forever, I think I equated age with maturity and experience with like,
Yeah.
oh, this person's very grounding and whatever. And then, I mean, I'm not going to go really into it, but essentially I call it my fuckboy experience
Okay. Okay.
because was with somebody who a little bit older was very grounding. When I met, very, very safe. Like just felt like, wow, this is very interesting. Maybe I need to date older men. Ended up doing a complete 180, ended up acting up, whatever. And for me, it was very easy to end it because there was no investment on my part. It was
Yeah.
only a couple weeks. But I think do we equate maturity with age?
The answer is we want to, but it doesn't necessarily, just because someone's older
Mhm.
doesn't mean they transitioned from boy to a
Yeah.
man. There's certain energy, these silver fox dad energies, right? Could just feel like maturity. But the
Yeah.
truth is, back to there's a couple questions,
Mhm.
like clarifying questions, is like when you meet this
Mhm.
person, right? Did you establish, where he was in life and what he wanted?
That's
And did he communicate truly where he was at? And
mm,
did you accept what he said? Or did you allow yourself to accept what he said, or did you try to brush it off
mhm.
and as if it didn't matter to you?
Intuitively, there was something off because there was just like there are little red flags that I guess chose to ignore because there were a lot of nice things done at the beginning, the green flags of like
Yeah,
coming over and building a dresser and like very,
yeah,
very sweet. And then the actions changed. And then that's when like it went from like very clear signals to
yeah,
very inconsistent signals and then getting caught doing something. And then
yeah,
I just ended it. But it for me was this interesting wake up call that like age does not equal maturity. Just because you've been through more in life,
yeah.
just because you are older.
I know plenty of older men
Yeah.
that just haven't transitioned from boy to man, and it's an idea of priorities. Incongruence is very much a boyish trait.
Yeah.
And
That's why we call it fuckboy.
I mean, there's such a negative connotation. It was this inconsistency in behavior, the incongruence in action and words. Like,
Mhm.
these are all signs that it's time to like
Yeah.
move on, right? It's time to like part ways. And I appreciate the time that we
Yeah. It doesn't
had
have to
together.
be so negative.
No, yeah, absolutely not.
It was a lesson, and for me, I actually have a lot of pride in myself for just ending it, just being like, "Okay,"
As you should, queen. Like, as you should. Like, when you started to recognize signs, good.
called it out. I was like,
Hey,
"This is"
listen, I appreciate the time we're together.
yeah,
And, this isn't working for me.
yeah,
I hope that you find what you're looking for. And it's time for me to move on. But
yeah,
it's not in our highest power, though. Like, let's say we had this experience and we're all guilty of it, to then later on, like, say this person that I was with was a bad person.
yeah.
Because
I have to
the
be
truth
careful of
is,
that.
we're with this person.
Mhm.
We were at that level. Like, by calling this person out was essentially calling us out for
Yeah,
being at that level.
yeah,
The high road is didn't work out. We weren't aligned
Yeah.
in many different ways, and I moved on, and that's the honorable,
Way to
and
do
most
that.
honest thing, because the last thing you want is you don't want the weight of someone's negative energy, like
Mhm.
people talking in the background. Like you want people to like coexist, and it's okay to move on.
Yeah, and these are big cities and small worlds. Like,
Yeah,
you eventually run into everybody, and I think it's nice to just try to keep it exactly like you said, like, calm, be honest, and
be
just move
honest.
on in a positive way.
Communication is the key.
So what would you I would say right now when people, like, ask, I guess, in dating, what I'm looking for, and for me at this point, which is just like I used to have a checklist, I used to feel like I needed
Yeah.
these, da, da, da. Now it's just emotional safety. It's somebody or people, people in my life that can hold my emotions even when they're going through kind of their own thing. One thing that I experienced growing up was a lot of fighting, so a lot of loud noises, very triggering for me. If I'm in a relationship or a conflict with like a sister, like a familial relationship, if you raise your voice, I shut down. And I know that that's a trigger. And I something I have worked on, but I don't think for me it's not like choosing to be yelled at or deal with it. It's just finding a person or people that are able to give me that emotional safety.
Obviously, no one likes to be yelled at. Like
Yeah.
that's not a
Yeah.
state that anybody enjoys.
Yeah. But some people can like come back and yell. I just shut down. That has always been my
Um,
coping mechanism.
Nobody wants to have that kind of energy put on them
Mhm.
because we feel, and vice versa. Like, what are we doing that they're feeling that energy?
Mhm.
Like, it's not just them, right? So, this idea of this mirror, it's like this person is triggered for a lot of reasons,
Mhm.
some related to, things
Yep.
unrelated to you,
Yep.
some related to you, right? So, can we hold space for
Mhm.
that, for
Mhm.
them to have their experience?
Right.
That is work. Like, can we hold and be supportive for a moment and hold back and hold that in
Mhm.
so that they have their moment so that you can pause, allow for that to pass so that
Mhm.
we're not triggered into it.
Mm.
Right. So being in conflict, being in a relationship is also allowing the other person to not necessarily, you're not a punching bag,
Mhm.
but also not to get goaded into what they're feeling. Because
Yeah.
when I'm angry, like I want the other person, and I don't know this, but like I want the other person to have that feel what I'm feeling.
Right.
And the truth is, that doesn't mean that's not going to resolve the issue. It's when we can be in a calm state to
Mhm.
have communication.
Mhm.
So to answer, like if someone is talking to you in a agitated or an aggressive state, like again, back to
Mhm.
work, like it's our work to not get triggered. And if you're shutting down, right, it's because you're getting triggered. That trigger there is you kind of crawl in and you
Yeah.
feel small,
Mhm.
right? But that trigger over time, when you strengthen that part of you, that small part of you, be able to say to this person,
Mhm.
you need to have a break.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm feeling triggered.
Yeah. We're kinda coming to the end here. I'm gonna do, before we wrap up, a little rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Feel good about that?
I love
You're
that.
gonna crush it.
Okay.
Okay. Personally, what is one thing that you believe men need to hear?
Men need to hear that emotional intelligence is the key.
Perfect. What is one thing women need to hear? And then it's okay, it's not gonna be mansplaining. It's an answer to a question.
What do women need to hear? Women need to hear that there are healthy men out there, that if you're discerning and patient and look at the proper signs, they will be there for you.
That's good, that's very strong. What is a relationship green flag?
Communication,
What is a relationship red flag?
incongruence.
Finally, what's something that you believe now that younger you wouldn't understand?
Patience. I don't think that I understood that things will come, and things come, and things change. And when I was younger, I thought things needed to be now, like
Mhm.
had to happen right now on
Mhm.
my time.
Mhm.
When truthfully, the more patient I was, the more the outcome that I really truly wanted resolved itself. And that's
Wonderful,
great.
perfect answers. I just wrote a Substack article about how the lessons that I look back, I see now, pattern of my life has been life telling me to slow down. Whether
Mm,
it was physically with like an injury or mentally, like getting burnt out or emotionally. So patience, definitely, that's the
yeah.
word for me. What's your word for 2026? I know we're like mid year, but
Mid-year is building.
huh?
Right now, I'm kind of building a life around a passion of mine, and it's something that I've wanted to do since I've been 14, and I'm kind of in the heat of it. It's
Yeah.
like both it's so challenging and
Mhm.
it's so rewarding all at
Mhm.
the same
Mhm.
time, and it's a journey, and I really like I'm in the kind of the fog of war right now where I'm
Mhm.
trying to figure my way out of it. And so I think building would be my word.
Yeah, that's perfect. Do you think building in terms of Kapala and everything you've done, has it made you softer or harder?
It's made me more flowy,
Okay.
right? Like I don't know if that's soft. I don't know if there's
Yeah.
water soft, right? So I would say that I'm less rigid and I more allow things to unfold. When I start to release or surrender to the fact that my expectations might not happen, I find that I suffer less.
Yeah, there's a lot there, I think, in terms of like short term, long term thinking and having expectations around that. Sharing that, go on forever. But thank you so much for being here. This
Thank
was
you.
amazing. I was so excited for this conversation just to kind of dive deep in
I
there, get
appreciate
a
it.
real, true, emotionally intelligent male perspective.
Yeah.
You're awesome.
Thank you so much. And read read the book.
Yes, it's
It's right
coming.
it's right next to my bed.
Oh, I
It's
love
right on my
it.
bed.
Yes, it will be coming at end of summer. My advanced reader copies I got into my Summit family's hands, but
Yes.
yeah, the book will be coming out. So thank you so much.
Yep.
Where can we find you? Social.
You can find Copala on Instagram at Copala by Ben Rose, and you can find all of our amazing clothing at Copala.com.
Yeah, so great. When are you gonna start doing women's stuff?
We launched a women's duster
Okay,
last week.
okay. I'm
Like,
I'm on it. I'm ready to try everything else out. Thank you again for being
my
here.
pleasure. Thank you
Yes.
for having me.
And then I'll do it.
I'll do it first.
Yeah,
Well,
go
thank you for being a Party Girl Interrupted. I had an amazing time. I can't wait to see next week's episode. Thank you for having me. Read the book. This is what it means to be stepping into your
Aw,
power.
you're the best. Thank you for watching Party Girl Interrupted. Amazing guest, Ben.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys next week. That was great. I like that. I should have my guest clothes.
Yeah, there you go.
Wait, look at my sneakers. No, look at my NYC sneakers.
There we go. Yeah, go Nick.
Oh.
Go New York, go New York, go! Go New York, go New York, go!